They thought they could get away with it until Karoline Leavitt fought back. Now the entire media industry is shaking. The newsroom was alive with energy, a controlled chaos of ringing phones, flashing headlines, and producers barking last-minute changes into headsets. The broadcast was about to begin, and in a matter of minutes, millions of viewers across the country would be watching. At the center of it all sat the panelists, seasoned media personalities who had built careers off their sharp opinions, quick jabs, and the ability to shape public perception. The topic of the day? Karoline Leavitt. She wasn't just another political figure. They had made her into a symbol, a target, an easy punchline. And tonight, they weren't holding back. The lead anchor adjusted their earpiece, smoothed their blazer, and leaned forward with a smirk. The camera zoomed in. The lights dimmed slightly. And then, it began. All right, let's talk about Karoline Leavitt, the latest political starlet, handpicked for her, let's say, visual appeal? Laughter rippled through the studio. Another panelist chimed in. You mean qualifications? Or are we not pretending anymore? More laughter. They continued dissecting her background. Not her policies, not her work, but her appearance, her age, and her supposed lack of experience. One even suggested that the only reason she got her position was because certain voters liked a pretty face on TV. The discussion wasn't a debate. It wasn't analysis. It was a hit job. But inside a dimly lit office in another city, Karoline Leavitt watched it unfold in real time. She wasn't alone. Across the country, millions of viewers tuned in. Some laughed along, some rolled their eyes, and others felt something shift. Because this wasn't criticism. This wasn't fair debate. This was something else. And within minutes, people started hitting record. The clip spread like wildfire. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Within hours, it had been shared and reshared, dissected, debated, and analyzed by political commentators and media watchdogs. Some defended the show, calling it fair game in the world of politics. Others were furious. One post went viral overnight. This isn't journalism. This is a public takedown of a young woman who earned her place at the table. This is defamation, plain and simple. Another. So it's okay to mock a woman's qualifications as long as she's conservative? Got it. And then the pressure mounted. Calls flooded into the network's offices, from viewers, from media watchdogs, even from advertisers. People wanted answers. And behind the scenes, the network was starting to sweat. But one person wasn't just talking about it. She was taking action. Karoline Leavitt picked up her phone, and the next call she made was to her lawyer. Something big was coming, but no one at the network saw it yet. The next morning, Karoline Leavitt woke up to chaos. Her phone had been buzzing non-stop since the segment aired. Messages flooded in, some supportive, some outraged, some warning her to just let it go. But letting it go was never an option. She sat at her kitchen table, scrolling through social media. Everywhere she looked, her name was trending. News outlets were dissecting the segment, debating whether the remarks were simply harsh commentary or something legally reckless. But then, something shifted. A clip from a legal analyst went viral overnight. A former defamation attorney, speaking on live television, had weighed in. His voice was calm, but his words were sharp. This isn't just an opinion piece gone wrong. This is legally dangerous territory. If Karoline Leavitt chooses to sue, she has a strong case. Very strong. That was all she needed to hear. By noon, Leavitt was in a private conference room with her lawyers, the tension thick in the air. The legal team had already reviewed the footage frame by frame, dissected every word, every tone, every smirk. And their conclusion? This was actionable. The remarks weren't harmless criticism. They were statements of fact, presented without evidence. And in the eyes of the law, that mattered. Her lead attorney, a seasoned litigator with a reputation for taking down media giants, folded his hands and leaned forward. They went too far, and they knew it. A silence stretched across the table. Then Karoline spoke. File it. And just like that, the lawsuit was in motion. By mid-afternoon, the legal documents were finalized and filed in court. It wasn't just a defamation case. It was a direct challenge to an entire industry that had long operated without consequences. The network executives didn't even have time to prepare. By 5 p.m., the news was out. Breaking: Karoline Leavitt files lawsuit against major TV network for defamation. The headlines were everywhere. News anchors stumbled over their words as they read the legal details live on air. Political analysts scrambled to respond. The network had been caught off guard and the panic was setting in. But the real storm, that came from the people. Social media erupted. Good. They get away with this too often. She's going to lose. No one wins against the media. If she wins this, it changes everything. And then the leak started. Late that night, screenshots of internal emails began circulating online. At first, they seemed harmless, routine production notes, show outlines. But then, buried between meeting recaps and script drafts, something explosive emerged. An email, dated the night before the broadcast, exposed the truth. Make her look inexperienced. Tie it to Trump's hiring decisions. Audience eats that up. Another from a senior producer. She's young, unqualified, and an easy target. No need to hold back. The emails weren't just careless remarks. They were proof of intent. This wasn't off-the-cuff banter. It was deliberate, premeditated, a coordinated smear campaign. And the moment those emails leaked, the entire lawsuit took a devastating new turn. Now it wasn't just a defamation case. It was a full-blown scandal. The leaked emails spread like wildfire. By morning, every major news outlet was running the story. The scandal was no longer just about Karoline Leavitt. It had transformed into a damning indictment of the network itself. Inside the network's headquarters, panic had taken hold. The executives had spent years building a reputation, controlling narratives, managing crises. But this was different. The legal team was in full damage control mode, reviewing every document, every segment, every internal memo, anything that could be used against them. They needed to know exactly how much trouble they were in before Karoline Leavitt's lawyers started digging deeper. And what they found made them sweat. The emails weren't isolated incidents. They were part of a pattern. There were more exchanges, more leaked memos, more internal discussions that painted a clear picture. This wasn't just a one-time mistake. The network had a system, a playbook. Step 1, pick a target. Step 2, shape the narrative before the public can form its own opinion. Step 3, control the talking points. Step 4, if necessary, push boundaries until the damage is done. And now, they were caught. A senior producer stormed into the CEO's office, face pale, voice shaking. "It's bad. Really bad. We have to get ahead of this." The CEO, usually calm, calculated, always in control, was silent. Because deep down he knew there was no spinning this. The network had two options. 1, double down, deny everything, and fight this in court. 2, cut their losses, issue an apology, and try to settle before more dirt surfaced. But before they could make a decision, another bombshell dropped. A former network employee came forward. She sat down for an exclusive interview, her face partially shadowed, her voice steady but filled with something else, determination. "I worked there for years. I saw how the machine operates. They don't just report news, they manufacture it. This was never about facts. This was about taking people down, and I can't stay silent anymore." The interview shattered everything. Viewers who had once trusted the network without question now weren't so sure. Sponsors started pulling ads. Ratings took a nosedive. The network's credibility crumbling. And for the first time, the people at the top, who once laughed at the idea of being held accountable, were now whispering about how much this could cost them. Because the reality was sinking in. This lawsuit wasn't just about Karoline Leavitt anymore. It was about every person the network had ever smeared. It was about every narrative they had twisted. It was about the entire system they had built, and whether it was finally about to collapse. But one thing was certain. This wasn't over yet. By the next morning, the network's name was everywhere, but for all the wrong reasons. Headlines dominated news sites. Leavitt lawsuit explodes. Network's emails leak. Was it all a setup? Former employee exposes media smear tactics. Advertisers back away. Is this the beginning of the end? And social media? An all-out battlefield. People weren't just watching this unfold, they were participating. Twitter threads dissected every leaked email. Influencers, political analysts, and everyday users pored over the evidence, calling out hypocrisy, connecting dots, and demanding accountability. A particularly damning clip made its way around the internet. A media watchdog compared the network's past coverage of other political figures, how they used the same tactics over and over, taking minor details and spinning them into career-ending controversies. They've done this before, and they'll keep doing it unless someone stops them. The backlash was relentless. Some former network supporters felt betrayed, realizing they'd been fed narratives carefully curated behind the scenes. And the worst part? The network's response only made things worse. By midday, a carefully worded statement was released. We stand by our commitment to journalistic integrity and robust political discourse. We regret any misunderstanding and will continue to engage in conversations that challenge and inform the public. That was it. No apology, no acknowledgement, just corporate fluff, and people saw right through it. This isn't an apology. It's damage control. So you got caught and now it's just a misunderstanding? Try again. They aren't sorry, they're just sorry they got exposed. It wasn't just viewers who were outraged anymore. Sponsors were starting to react too. The first ad pull came quietly. A well-known brand issued a vague statement about reevaluating partnerships. But then, more followed. A major tech company suspended ads indefinitely. A national retail chain cut ties completely. A top-tier sponsor publicly distanced themselves, calling for higher standards in media ethics. This wasn't just a bad PR moment. This was a crisis. And in the network's executive boardroom, the mood was grim. The people who had once mocked Karoline Leavitt on live TV were now watching their careers, their reputations, and their influence crumble in real time. And then came the final crushing blow. One of their own turned against them. A current network employee, someone still on payroll, broke ranks. In an exclusive interview, he dropped a single statement that set the media world on fire. If the public saw what really happens behind the scenes, this wouldn't just be a lawsuit, it would be a reckoning. And just like that, the floodgates opened. Because now the network wasn't just facing a lawsuit, they were facing a full-blown collapse. Inside the network's headquarters, panic had turned into desperation. The newsroom, once filled with confidence, power, and control, was now a war zone. Top executives sat in a closed-door meeting, their voices low, urgent, tense. This wasn't just a PR crisis anymore. This was survival. Someone slammed a stack of papers onto the table. Sponsors are pulling out faster than we can replace them. Viewership is tanking. Our name is poison right now. The CEO rubbed his temples, exhaustion clear on his face. We need a way out. Now. The legal team seated at the far end of the room was already 3 steps ahead. They knew the only way to stop the bleeding was to kill the lawsuit before it saw the inside of a courtroom, so they drafted an offer. It was massive, a multi-million-dollar settlement, enough to make anyone think twice. But it came with one condition. Karoline Leavitt had to sign a gag order. If she took the money, she could never speak about this case again. No interviews, no statements, no legal precedent. It would all go away, quietly. The network's lawyers believed this was their best move, because if this lawsuit went to trial, everything would be exposed. Every email, every private conversation, every producer's meeting where they plotted which public figures to tear down. They couldn't afford that. They needed Karoline Leavitt to take the deal. That evening, her legal team received the offer. The number was jaw-dropping. One of her lawyers hesitated, looking at Karoline. Most people would take this, but she didn't even glance at the papers. Her mind was already made up. The next day, Karoline called a press conference. Cameras flashed as she stepped up to the podium. The room fell silent. She took a deep breath, then spoke with clarity, strength, and purpose. I didn't file this lawsuit for money. I filed it because words have consequences. The tension in the room grew. Reporters leaned forward. This network thought they could destroy my reputation and walk away without consequences. They thought they could silence me with a settlement. And I want the world to know. She paused, locking eyes with the cameras. I will not be taking their money. I will see them in court. The room erupted. Shouts from reporters, news anchors scrambling to go live with the update, social media, a firestorm. She rejected millions just to make sure the truth comes out? Respect. If she wins, this changes everything. This isn't just about her anymore. It's about all of us. And at the network's headquarters? Silence. Because now they knew. They were going to court. And for the first time in history, they were the ones on the defensive. The trial date was set. For the first time, a major media network was being dragged into court, not as the investigator, not as the storyteller, but as the accused. And the world was watching. Every major news outlet covered it relentlessly. Legal analysts debated whether Karoline Leavitt had a real shot at winning, or if she had just made the biggest mistake of her life by rejecting the settlement. The stakes? Unprecedented. If she lost, the network would walk away untouched, emboldened to continue their smear tactics. But if she won, it wouldn't just be a financial loss for the network. It would be a shift in power, a warning shot to the entire media industry. Inside the courtroom, tension was thick. Karoline sat with her legal team, composed, unwavering. Across from her, the network's lawyers, seasoned, expensive, ruthless. And then, the testimony began. First, the former employee. She took the stand, her hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed straight ahead. I worked there for nearly a decade. I was part of the machine. We knew what we were doing. We picked targets, we shaped narratives, and we never thought anyone would fight back. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The network's lawyers squirmed. Then came the emails, projected onto the massive screen for the jury to see. Evidence of intent. Make her look weak. Tie her to the most divisive talking points. She's young and doesn't know how to fight back. But she did. She fought back harder than they ever expected. The network's lawyers tried to argue that this was just commentary. But Karoline's team tore through that defense. They played the footage, frame by frame. Every sneer, every laugh, every word spoken with the intent to ruin her credibility, not debate her politics. The jury watched. The world watched. And then? The verdict came in. The judge's voice was steady. The court finds the defendant guilty of defamation with reckless disregard for the truth. Stunned silence. Then, the ruling. The network was ordered to pay millions in damages. More importantly, they were forced to publicly retract their statements and issue a formal apology. Outside the courthouse, Karoline faced the cameras once more. This was never about money. It was about standing up to the machine. It was about proving that the media doesn't get to destroy lives for sport. Today we sent a message. Truth matters. And the people who think they can manipulate it without consequence? They're wrong. The public exploded with reactions. A landmark case. Nothing will be the same after this. Finally, someone held them accountable. The media isn't untouchable anymore. And in newsrooms across the country, other journalists, producers, and executives watched with nervous anticipation. Because if it happened to this network today, who would be next? The moral of the story. Power unchecked is dangerous. For too long, the media has shaped narratives without consequence, deciding whose careers thrive and whose crash and burn. But today, that changed. Because when you attack someone's reputation for sport, when you destroy lives for ratings, when you think you can say anything without accountability, sometimes the person you least expect fights back. And when they do, you might just find yourself begging for mercy. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. This was just the beginning. The war for truth is far from over.